All right, so I am going to actually continue what on the same topic that Kerry has brought in terms of grocery. I'm going to actually go even one step further down and look at a shopping center. And so what you had saw in Kerry's presentation is data that's pulled from our Vista Data Explorer. And so these are data sets that our team will pull from Data Explorer and put into a spatial or analytics software like Esri ArcGIS, Tableau, CartoDB, and for some of our data sets, even using Excel to understand what's going on with a location. That's possible with our Vista Data Explorer. We do have another tool here that I love to go to for quick answers. When I don't want to open up one of the spatial software. So I'm going to actually go out of this here and head over to our Vista property reports. So with Vista property reports, this is a quick way for me as an analyst to understand what's going on at a location. So when I sign in here, I just polygon a location and I put in the time frame that I want to look at, and what comes back to me is this report that visually and graphically shows what's going on at that location. And so for this study here, as I wanted to learn about the effects of COVID-19 on our shopping centers, I pulled information on the Fresh Pond Mall in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So here you'll see the polygon that I drew, and here we're looking at pre-COVID-19. And so pre-COVID-19, we see that the activity in the shopping center is pretty spread out. There is a cinema here at the shopping center. So mobile location data, since it does provide you, the coordinates of where we see the mobile device, you'll see that mapped out here. So we saw people with devices that are at Apple Cinema in this area. We also see that there are devices that are seen at Staples, this McDonald's here, and then there's actually a TJ Maxx and a Whole Foods here. So lots of activity in this shopping center. If I keep scrolling down, I can also understand visitation over time for this shopping center. I can dive deeper into just learning about the foot traffic at this location during the beginning of 2020, before COVID-19. We can also look at visitation times, day of the week, and time of day. So we saw for this shopping center that interestingly enough, that Monday and Tuesday are the top visitation days for the shopping center. And that is probably because it has a McDonald's in the shopping center. So we're seeing a lot of lunchtime activity in this area, as you see with the 12 o'clock bar being the highest. We also see 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock as top times during this pre-COVID time for the shopping center. Now this shape might look a little familiar, as Kerry has showed what a mobile trade area looks like. So we have pre-COVID what the mobile trade area looked like for Fresh Pond Mall. We see that it spans out into the Boston area and as well as into the suburbs outside of Cambridge. And Kerry also talked about common evening locations. So looking at where a phone sits mostly during the weekends and weekends to derive a possible origin point for that device. So you see with pre-COVID that it's pretty spread out, and as we saw with the mobile trade area above, lots of devices coming from each of the nearby suburbs. Our data can also give insight into where people are coming and going to before and after they arrive at the location, and that's where this pathing data comes into handy. And we can also provide demographics and also looking at what other brands people have an affinity to. So I'm gonna actually dive into this right after I go into the post-COVID. So I actually pulled another report here that looked at the same shopping center, but at a different time frame. So I'm just looking at post-COVID-19. And so it was pretty stark contrast here. So pre-COVID-19, we saw that the shopping center was pretty filled up. We saw that there was activity throughout the shopping center, but reflecting the closure of non-essential businesses. And what we see here is Whole Foods is still seeing that traffic activity. This is that McDonald's there. There's also Staples. But look at this blank spot here, the cinema. I know that a lot of, I actually saw an article about how people are finding different ways to cope because they can't go to the cinema anymore. And that's reflected in our foot traffic analysis here. We also saw TJ Maxx with this big gap here. Now, one thing I want to point out, so we can look at the foot traffic post-COVID-19. We can look at how visitation times have changed. Particularly what I wanted to point out is the mobile trade area. So as we saw with the previous analysis with the grocery store chain, we see with this shopping center that the mobile trade area has also shrunken. And so I had pointed out that their trade area extended into Boston before. So we're probably getting commuters from Boston, probably coming from work or going to work, going to this shopping center. So, but post-COVID-19, we're not seeing that case. And then we see that the shape is a little more refined than it was before. So we're getting particular neighborhoods that are traveling to this shopping center for their probably grocery store needs or their McDonald's fix. Now, another thing I wanted to point out that I gleaned through really quickly is this report here about the brands that the devices have an affinity to. So what this report does is it looks at everybody that was seen in the shopping center, and it also analyzes what other brands are we seeing, what other locations brands are we seeing these devices at, these visitors at. And so this is really helpful now because we can see what brands are people still going to, what brands are still holding up strong. And for a shopping center who has lost many tenants, this information can be really helpful because they can understand, okay, in the area around me, what other stores are people going to? What other brands are they going to? And who can I possibly bring into my shopping center after COVID-19, after stay-at-home orders, to help boost up my shopping center again? And so if I look at just grocery stores, here I have pre-COVID-19. If I pull up grocery store brands here, we see that there's a pretty long list here. We see Whole Foods because there's a shopping center that this shopping center does have a Whole Foods, so those people are more likely to visit a Whole Foods. But we also see Trader Joe's. We see H Mart, which is an Asian market, and we see Wegmans pop up here as well as Stop and Shop. But at post-COVID-19, if we pull this list up, we actually see a lot of those grocery stores have disappeared. And for the consumers that this shopping center is attracting, these are now their top grocery stores that they're going to. So they're not only going to Whole Foods, but we see them cross-shopping at Star Market, Trader Joe's, and the Stop and Shop. So UberMedia has over 1.5 million polygons in our library, and we also have most regional and national brands polygoned in our library. So we can look at this across sectors and across brands. So again, this is our Vista property reports, and it is going to be launching next week actually. And it is a self-service tool, so you would be able to go into the website, draw the location that you want to look at, put in the time frame, and pretty readily get a report back with that same information that I had showed you earlier in on the website. And so for any businesses, small businesses, big brands that want to quickly get some information on how COVID-19 has impacted their locations, the Vista property property report is a great tool for doing that analysis. So if you want more information about this and about the launch next week, be sure to contact us at contact@ubermedia.com.
Hey, Ev, this is Kerry. I wanted to just call attention to a couple of questions that we had.
Oh, great.
One that came in was, can you distinguish retail store employees versus visitors?
Yeah, so what we do there is with our common evening and our common daytime locations. So for that specific question, looking at common daytime locations, so where does a device spend most of their time during work hours? We use that, the results from that algorithm to filter out any employees, possible employees at that location. So we are able to do that in our data.
Yes, and I'll also to tap onto that to say that our platform, if you have a rule set that you're interested in using that's different than ours, you can get the data that's all the pings in a location and make your own sort of analysis as well. It's possible that way too.
Okay. Looks like I have some other questions about our Vista property report. So the other question that came up is, it looks like I geofenced the entire shopping center, which I did. I went into a satellite view and drew the boundaries of Fresh Pond Mall. Do you need to have a polygon for each individual brand within the shopping center? Now, that depends on the analysis that you're looking to do. So in this case, we did the entire shopping center because I wanted to know just generally how visitation looked at that shopping center. But if you wanted to look at an individual store in the center, like the McDonald's or the Whole Foods, you can definitely polygon that, just polygon that Whole Foods or polygon that McDonald's to understand visitation to that location. Another question here, what is the range and cost of the Vista property reports? Great question. So the pricing starts at $59 a month for the results that you saw me walk through. So it's a pretty low cost way to start off your analysis for a location. Again, if you're interested in Vista property reports, go ahead and check out contact@ubermedia.com. And if you have any other questions about looking at consumer behavior, understanding visitation to the location, and any of the analysis that we had just shown, be sure to put that through into the Q&A section. I know I have some further questions. Let me answer one more before we actually dive into tourism here. So do you have a way to distinguish between primary versus secondary versus tertiary trade areas based off of the % of visitors seen? So right now in our system, you can do multiple runs of a trade area to see that. So if you wanted to understand you can do multiple runs of the trade area to see that. So another way to do it is to contextualize the common evening location origin points. So with those common evening locations, we can break down the top zip codes, we can break down the top census block groups, and so you can decide what zip codes and what census block groups you want to look at, like how far they are, in order to do the trade areas by those 3 breakdowns.